Welcome back, everybody, to the Boston Sports Summit. I am your host, Tim Barnett, and I am excited to be back. It is the Boston Sports Summit presented by the Grid Network. And we have a lot going on between the Patriots, the Red Sox, Celtics, and Bruins. I mean, the Bruins and the Celtics, their regular seasons are over. It is playoff time. We're going to be talking a little bit about each, especially with the Bruins and how they wrapped up their final season. But to kick things off, I want to get started with the story that dropped today. All right. We have a story on ESPN reported by Don Van Natta Jr., Seth Wickersham, and Jeremy Fowler. At least two guys you should be familiar with. Seth Wickersham doing a bunch of hit pieces on the Patriots back in the day, as well as Jeremy Fowler was on the E60 for a long time with ESPN. But they put together this article that came out this morning saying the title reading, "Voted Off the Island, Inside Bill Belichick's Failed Job Hunt." And that speaks volumes because, as we all know, Belichick was, for lack of a better word, unceremoniously fired from New England. I mean, he, was a mutual part in the ways, but I feel like if you know everything that's going on, you can read between the lines, you understand what's going on, then yes, he was unceremoniously fired, which I was one of the proponents of, like, I'm done. Bill, thank you for your time. It's been a great 24 years, but we're done. Okay, thank you. You can move on now. But with everything that has come out since, between, the Kraft letting Bill go, the ridiculous press conference that they had to make, like, I love Bill. Bill, I'm a Patriot for life. Just stuff to make the fans feel good and kind of put that cover, that facade on everything that's going on. And then, too, with the Dynasty on Apple TV Plus and how much of a fiasco that was. You can see my earlier videos as to what my thoughts are on that whole awful, awful, awful inside the Patriot world, right? It was basically a hit piece against Bill. And now, too, with this, I feel like this is the part of the story where it's like, you know what? We're done. It's over. We don't need to we don't need to talk about Kraft and Belichick anymore. I mean, hell, Kraft v. Belichick part 38 right here, folks. Like, that's insane to me. Insane. And I want to read you a few snippets that I found interesting. So, obviously, to just refresh your memory, Belichick interviewed twice with the Falcons. He did a one-on-one session with Arthur Blank, and then he followed it up with a lengthy interview with Blank and team executives, including CEO at the time, Rich McKay, which, as I pointed out, was not Belichick's favorite person. And, from Belichick's perspective, a source says, close to him says, he had done everything right. Great. So, Belichick, this is what's funny, because during the time, during the speculation period, everybody was saying that Bill's going to want to be the head coach and GM. He's not going to want to work with anybody else. He's going to want to work with himself and his guys, and that's what it's going to be. Well, according to this, quote, he assured Blank that he wasn't seeking the total control. He pledged to work with the team's existing group of decision makers, including general manager Terry Fontenot. Belichick also knew that Blank had checked his references, with a group that included Patriots owner Robert Kraft and Jonathan Kraft. All right, that's interesting. But again, as it's stated right there, and as we found out after Belichick didn't get hired by Atlanta, Bill was like, listen, I'll be collaborative, okay? I don't want total control. I understand that total control does not, fit the modern day NFL, and I will be fine. I'll be good, just I want the job. I want to coach. That's it. So, it goes on to talk about Belichick and, working, trying to interview for the other teams, the other 6 teams that were out there. And obviously that didn't work. But when you're going through it, it talks about Arthur Blank and his perspective. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the first page, he goes, quote, "What Blank didn't say was that he and his top lieutenants had voted on the team's next head coach, ranking each candidate." Before I go on, can you tell me where Bill Belichick ranked in those votings if you haven't read the article? And for those of you who said he was like number 2 or number 3, you're wrong. Belichick didn't even finish in anyone's top 3, from Arthur Blank to Rich McKay to any of the other quote-unquote top lieutenants that work for the Atlanta Falcons. Wow. The greatest head coach of all time didn't even finish top 3 in Rich McKay, Arthur Blank, the owner, and the other quote-unquote top lieutenants of the Falcons in order for their job. With who was out there, I mean, who would you rather have, all things considered? Bill Belichick or Jim Harbaugh? Who would you rather have? I mean, I would go with Bill Belichick, especially if he wants to just coach. But again, you can call me biased. I know, Pats fan right here. But it was wild because I had to flip the page and I saw that first line. I go, seriously? Because I thought he was right behind Raheem Morris, or at least third, right? They had Raheem Morris, Mike Vrabel, Bill Belichick, something like that. But nope, he didn't even finish in the top 3 among those guys. So it was interesting because, it goes on to discuss Belichick's leadership style and how it might be outdated, even though it's so funny because everyone wants to bring in his leadership style. And listen, he could be a hot ass. There's no two ways about it. But guys still loved him. I mean, when you saw the behind-the-scenes videos, of the post-game, and you see Kendrick Bourne, loving all over Bill Belichick. I mean, Kendrick Bourne does not hate Bill. Matthew Judon does not hate Bill. Now, Mac Jones has a whole different side of the story, but again, those guys don't hate him. Hell, they seem to love him. So clearly, he can relate to players. That's not the problem. And that's what bothered me. So in that leadership style, it says, quote, "Belichick's leadership style, in part, led to the decision by 7 team owners to pass on him. And the bad blood between Kraft and Belichick was no secret around the league. According to more than a dozen sources close to the coach and owners who spoke with ESPN on the condition they remain anonymous, obviously, both Kraft and Belichick declined to comment." So that's crazy. As I'm going to read, obviously, they declined to, speak. But the bad blood, I don't understand. I mean, I kind of understand where it came from, but I don't at the same time. Now, I remember when I was going to scout school, which took place at the Senior Bowl. Phil Savage was our teacher. Shout out to Phil Savage, who's working for the Jets now. It was a heck of a class, heck of a school. It was a fun time. Really enjoyed it. Really learned a lot. But I remember distinctly we had a couple speakers, and they were GMs, scouts. They came in and spoke to us, and they were talking about how, one of the things that you should do as a general manager is befriend the owner. Make sure that you're telling the owner, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is why we're doing it. Build that relationship, because at the end of the day, obviously, he's your boss. That owner is your boss. And you don't report to anybody else. So that kind of stuck with me because it's like, all right, well, if I ever amass to anything, that, hey, you know what? If I can keep this guy happy and I can at least, show him and, be open and forthright with what I'm doing and why I think it's going to be beneficial to the team, then that's a great way to keep my job, basically, right? And so when thinking about Belichick in that regard, do you really think Bill was that, open and honest about it? No, of course not. And obviously it goes into, the later on as to the coldness of Belichick, but that's something that stuck with me. And something that, Belichick wasn't that dude. But yet, guess what? He got the job done, didn't he? So, and of course, so what I'm trying to get at is Belichick and Kraft being that bad blood. Like, I don't understand where that came from. Okay, yeah, Belichick chose the next guy over Tom Brady, who still basically went out on top. He was still physically able to perform in his final season. But yet, they weren't going to talk about that. If that's the bad blood, if the bad blood is between Belichick letting Brady walk, I mean, yeah, that sucks. It's stupid. But at the same time, Robert, get over it. You could have ponied up the money. You could have told Belichick to kick rocks. All right? At the end of the day, it's his team. And it felt like Robert Kraft doesn't want to take accountability for any of this. Anything that went wrong these last 4 years since Brady left, it's all on Bill. It's all Bill. Bill made me do this. Really? Because at the end of the day, the last time I checked, Robert, you were the one signing the checkbooks. You were the one who had that ability. And the funny part was, for the last 20 years, I was one of those believe in Bill guys. In Belichick, we trust. When it came to letting Brady walk, that kind of shattered that for me. I'll be honest. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that I believed in Bill letting Brady walk. But, I trusted what Bill had next. Clearly, he had Jimmy Garoppolo, who turns out Jimmy Garoppolo's average, above average quarterback at times. But, with Robert Kraft, he was sobbing. I mean, in the dynasty, when they talked about how emotional the three of them got. When Belichick was on the phone, Tom was at Kraft's house, and they were just basically, put words in their mouth, but sobbing over the fact that Brady's done. He's not a Patriot anymore. And now, come to find out, through everything, it's like, nope, Bill made me do it. Bill made me do it. Bill made me do it. Hey, listen, I wanted to spend money. Bill wouldn't let me spend money. Really? That's the kicker. That is the kicker to all of this, because when I think about it, and I really tried to understand, I am the one who is blasting John Henry for not spending a dime, for actually lowering the payroll of the Boston Red Sox. There have been times in the Bruins history. My father's talked about this a lot. The Bruins history, where the fans used to get on the Jacobs family for not spending money, right? And now there's a salary cap, so they all spend roughly the same. And now the Bruins are one of the top spenders, obviously hitting that salary cap almost every year. But when it came to the Patriots not spending money, not going out, signing the diva receiver, not getting the big name free agents, we all blamed Bill for that. We all blamed Bill. And that's what really, was hilarious, because as we're all blaming Bill for this, it's not Bill's fault. It's Kraft. Kraft and Bill were the ones who were conspiring against them. So it's sorry, I'm hearing that there's some technical difficulties going on. At least the screen is grainy. But so that's what really is funny to me, is that still to this day, Robert Kraft has yet to take accountability over all of this. And so, getting back to the story, I want to read, quote, that despite friendly first session, obviously between Blank and Bill, the unthinkable happened for a billionaire and a legendary coach. Blank and Belichick checked each other's references. Blank spoke by phone at least twice to Robert Kraft. Among the NFL owners, Blank considers Kraft his closest friend. All right, that's interesting. Later on, it describes, in a conversation with Blank, Kraft delivered a stark assessment of Belichick's character. According to a source who spoke to two people, those two people being a close Kraft friend and a longtime Belichick confidant. The source who spoke to those two people quoted the Belichick source as saying, quote, Robert called Arthur to warn him not to trust Bill. That account was backed up by the close friend of Kraft. How is that not an indictment right there? How is that not an indictment on Robert Kraft saying, he just still has this animosity towards Bill because he was an ass toward the greatest football player of all time, being Tom Brady. Really? I understand it. And it sucked watching Brady win in Tampa. Don't get me wrong. I kind of enjoyed it. It was fun, especially because they beat Pat Mahomes. I'm sorry. I hate Pat Mahomes for a zillion reasons, some of which I probably got onto the show. Others are just flat out dumb. I'll admit it. But still, I can't stand him. So it was nice to see Brady win another, Gronk win another, even though it was in a Tampa uniform, which sucked. But the fact that Kraft's friend backed up that statement is wild. If it came from Belichick sources, then you could sit there and kind of, okay, yeah, maybe, but it could be hearsay too. But no, Kraft's friend backed it up. Multiple sources said that Kraft spoke with some candor to Blank about Belichick. One source close to Bill said Kraft was a, quote, was a big part, end quote, of why the Falcons passed on hiring him. The sources said Kraft made clear to Blank that, quote, you'll never have a warm conversation with. So remember that thing I talked about earlier about how, as a GM, if you ever amass that position, that you need to be that friendly face to the owner, need to go through every single decision you're doing and tell them why and teach them football if they don't know it, if they're a new owner, whatever. So what? So freaking what? If you never have a warm conversation with a guy. I heard a great, kind of a good parallel earlier today on Felger and Matz, just saying how if you hire a guy to do a job and they do the job, they do it well, but they're an ass, would you give them a good recommendation? It's yeah, you could sit there, you call your buddy and say, hey, I just hired so-and-so to do this job on my house or whatever. How was it? Oh, well, hey, they got the job done. They did exactly what I wanted, but they were kind of an ass. And if the friend doesn't go on hire him, then, it's shame on the friend. Because I said the guy did the job well, which Belichick did. Now, the last 4 years are a different story. And I think that's partially Belichick's fault. And I think also, too, that it just, came down to poor drafting and, it just years finally caught up to them. Brady being Brady, building up the team, it didn't help anymore. But, it was crazy to me. And so here it goes on to say, a Falcon source says, quote, Blank likes coaches who feel part of a family. And it wasn't going to be that way with Bill. Okay. But if you're getting to the Super Bowl, if you're winning Super Bowls, why? Who cares? Right? You would think. The comments were consistent with what Kraft had been telling confidants for months. After, this is all Apple Dynasty stuff right here. After an unprecedented run, after Spygate and Aaron Hernandez, after backing his coach in moving on from Brady, after disagreements public, cash that Crafts were willing to spend. Yeah, okay. I'll believe that. Never. And private, i.e. leaking against each other, directly or through associates. The owner lost trust in Belichick, which was a key reason for their deteriorating working relationship. In the end of the Patriot way. A second source close to Kraft said, quote, Kraft found Bill to be extremely difficult and obstinate and kind of stubborn, and in the end, not worthy of his trust. And also very, very, very arrogant. Wow. 3 arrogance. Sheesh. Like, no duh. The guy won 6 Super Bowls. He also won 2 with Parcells and the Giants. And his scheme for how they beat Jim Kelly and that offense in 1990 off the wide right field goal is in the Hall of Fame that Belichick himself designed. I mean, hell, his boat is 8 rings. The 6 he won in New England and the 2 that he was the assistant for in New York. I mean, all things considered, it should say 6 rings because that's, Bill Belichick won 6 rings as a head coach. No one really thinks about, like Josh McDaniels winning all those Super Bowls. Like, if Josh McDaniels went out and won a Super Bowl as a head coach on his own, I think the vast majority of the public would be like, McDaniels has 1 ring. Outside of, obviously, because he won it himself. But obviously, Bill's arrogant. Like, that's the whole thing. And then, of course, too, like, I love this. Yeah, to throw Aaron Hernandez, Spygate. Listen, Spygate, yes, I agree. But did that mean the Patriots had this, edge? Like, no. And I love listening to the Rams guys, especially Marshall Faulk, talk about that Super Bowl, saying, like, Willie McGinnis was calling our plays. Like, I was standing there in the backfield going, wait, how does he know our plays? That's such a load of crap. I mean, come on. Like, they didn't know your plays. They just knew your formations. Here you go, Mike Motz. Change it up a little bit. Regardless, that's what was, just insane to me. This whole ordeal has really, it's been a lot. And so the other thing too that I wanted to get to was that you're probably sitting there thinking to yourself, well, Tim, Robert Kraft, had every incentive, or not had every incentive, excuse me. Robert Kraft doesn't like Bill. Clearly, I've demonstrated that time and time again. But one thing you might not know is Belichick had a $25 million salary for this upcoming season. And that was like one of the big stories too, was, okay, is Kraft going to fire Bill because of that, or is he going to keep him because of that salary? And no team's going to trade for him because, one, Belichick's going to tell them, don't give up valuable draft capital just to get me and my $25 million salary. It's stupid. And so you would think that Kraft, knowing that he got that $25 million, as it's $25 million salary for Bill, and as it says here in the article, if the Falcons had hired Belichick, the reported $25 million annual salary owed him by the Krafts for the upcoming season would have been offset by blank. That's the part I was trying to get to, was that the Falcons would have picked up that $25 million. So Kraft had every incentive to get Belichick off his books and hired by another team. And yet he was still a petty ass and essentially gave him a bad recommendation. Not saying it was a recommendation, but again, because legal implications, a lot of, all this crap. So still, you would think that because that $25 million salary of real money is going to Bill either way, that Kraft's like, I don't want to pay that. You pay that. They didn't do it. They still held a grudge over him, and that's where we stand today. It's, this is like the story that never ends. And don't get me wrong, it's entertaining for me because I get to come on here and talk about it and, just continue the saga. But overall, I mean, what else are we going to do? So now moving on to another team that is, fallen down the drain recently, the Boston Red Sox. Their last 8 games after opening 7-3, they have now gone 2-6. And the funny part was, I was the one, and many others, you probably included, were bitching about the pitching. We don't have good pitchers. We had all these guys out there, Ohtani, Yamamoto, Montgomery, Snell, all these guys available to help bolster our starting rotation. And yet, we didn't go after any of them. And, we went after, but we just undersold them left and right. So obviously they're not going to pick us. And yet, when all is said and done, the best part of our team has been our starting staff. Our starting staff has an ERA that is first in the league at 203 earned run average. Crazy, right? Our starting rotation is the best starters in terms of earned run average in the league. Yet our relief, interestingly enough, is just below average at 17th out of 30 teams at a 411 earned run average, which is still, pretty bad, but it's crazy. And as a staff overall, we're second in baseball with a 289 earned run average, whereas before last night's game, we were first in baseball. And so when you're thinking about how bad this team is, you're like, well, okay, it's definitely not our starters because they're going 5-6 innings almost every time they go out there if they're not hurt, which I'll get into that in just a second. And then our staff is, okay, they're below average, but it's not like they're falling off a cliff. Like we have the best starters and then the worst relievers, in terms of earned run average. No, we're a little below average. It's actually the offense and the defense. So all offseason, one of the things that the Red Sox have been trying to push across from Alex Cora to Sam Kennedy to even Tom Werner, when Tom Werner tried to make up or recall his, going full throttle, part of the things that he said in that same statement of, well, no, full throttle is how I live my life. Like what Tom Werner went after was, he goes, well, I was talking to some guys and they did the numbers, and that if we had an average defense, then we would have been in the playoffs. Okay, Tom, like, there you go. All right, so let's see. How have we done defensively? That's right. We have the most errors in baseball and our 30th, dead last, in fielding percentage with a 973 fielding percentage. So, do you think that this defense has been stressed enough with this team? Because from what I'm seeing a team that isn't even triple-A caliber. Hell, they'd be lucky to survive against the Portland Sea Dogs. I was tweeting about it the other night. I swear, if you put the Portland Sea Dogs at Fenway Park versus this iteration of the Boston Red Sox as it currently is constituted, hell, I'll even give them a healthy Rafi Devers for that matter. The Portland Sea Dogs, I wouldn't be surprised, would win like Major League 3. That's how crazy it is. And for their hitting, now Trevor Story was never going to come here and be a number 3 hitter, even though they were forcing him in that position. Because let's face it, outside of Coors Field, the dude's been below average. But as a team all season through these last 18 games, because the Red Sox currently stand at 9-9. They're 23rd in batting average at 229. They have an on-base percentage that's 22nd in baseball at 305. Their slugging percentage is dead average, right in the middle of the pack at 15th with a 387 slugging percentage. And their OPS, which is on-base plus slugging percentage, is 20th at 692. And as for how many home runs they've hit as a team, that's right. They're number 5 in the league with 23 home runs. So, obviously, those home runs have come as a lot of solo shots, which is hilarious in and of itself and just fitting to how everything has looked so far, right? And it's interesting because, when I'm going through this and I'm watching these games, and as I just mentioned, it's all just bad baseball. It's all baseball that, hell, if you're in the minors and you're playing like this, you're going to get fired. Don't even think about staying on the team. They're going to kick you off the team if you're playing like this. You don't know how many outs there are. You're just making careless errors left and right. Balls that are hit right to you, and you're dropping them. And it's not like you're playing at a crappy ballpark with a train running through center field. No, this is Fenway Park. This is one of the best ballparks in baseball. Now, people will debate about that, obviously, but all in all, it's still one of the best ballparks to play. You're in the major leagues. You have all the lights. You have all the equipment. You have the weight room, the lifting, the regiment. Everything is given to you. And yet, you're playing like you're in high school. Hell, you're playing like you're in Little League. That undisciplined, that careless. I mean, I remember when I was pitching in Little League, sometimes there were some games where I felt like I had to strike every single batter I faced out, or else my fielders behind me were just going to make error after error after error. And I'd be stuck on the mound throwing an extra 50 pitches because, I'm getting it over the plate and my guys behind me, I'm afraid that my guys behind me aren't going to be able to field the ball cleanly or do anything like that. So it's insane to me. I want to sit here and I want to be able to watch this team. Like, I want to enjoy my baseball season. But with how everything is playing out, I can't, because this is just bad baseball. And I don't understand why or how anybody can cheer for this sort of thing. I mean, last night was a great example, right? You had Wilyer Abreu kick a ball in right field, and he somehow threw the guy out at home. Yet, all of a sudden, they reversed it because Connor Wong. You see, this is how bad this team is. I can't even remember our damn starting catcher's name. Connor Wong blocked the play, which we could get into blocking the plate, how stupid it is, and how, the injury to, I want to say Bryce. I know it's not his name, but the Giants catcher, Buster Posey, how the injury to Buster Posey, while tragic, it should have mattered. That should not have mattered. That just because he's the face of baseball and took a bad injury because he blocked the plate, you need to bring that back. But that would have never happened had Abreu not Olayed the ball. Like, see, that's the thing that kills me that I've seen from this team. The amount of Olay, like, ready? You're like, bull, Olay, like, that's what they're doing. Here's an idea. Square up the damn ball. Is it that hard? You're major league professionals. And this is the nonsense that you and I have to deal with when watching this team. This is the product that you got to pay a third of your check, third of your salary for just to go watch a single game and sit in the stands and basically boo this team. Hell, if you could, bring a whole tomato with you and start chucking it. Do it like they do on stage. It shows, have the rotten fruit, and just chuck it at the guys, right? Like, that's how bad this team is and how stupid it is for us to allow this. Really. It's absolutely careless. And then Triston Casas. Now, when I was playing ball, one of the best things I did was run the bases, and yet Triston Casas, who is standing on second base in the top of the third, down 2-0, got a leadoff double. And he took a lead. They threw over at him. And in the new rule, that if they throw over 3 times, if they don't get him out on the third attempt, I guess he can take the next base. I think something like that. So he's thinking, all right, they already threw over me once, and I was safe. And the third baseman is backed deep behind third. He's not even near the bag. So let me just time this out and go. Well, first of all, his eyes deceived him because he clearly doesn't understand the pickoff move that the pitcher was having. So he just bolts for it. And plus, he's a big dude. He's 260 plus pounds, probably. I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but he's a big guy. Do you really think that lug is going to have enough speed to generate it over, especially when the pitcher can just do what he did last night? I mean, good God. And he got thrown out, and obviously Alex Cora was in the dugout going, what the F did he just do? Right? And then later on, Casas, called it, I guess, after the game, a low baseball IQ. Well, sorry to all the kids out there, but no shit, Sherlock. I mean, low baseball IQ. Dude, how stupid are you to friggin' think that was okay? And how big you are. I mean, don't you know how fast you run? Don't you know that this is the professionals? Like, I can tell you this. I think I'm a pretty fast guy. But I know for a fact that compared to those guys, I'm not even close. Except for Casas, I know I could beat him. I know for a fact I could beat him. That's just ridiculous. Absolutely terrible play. Undisciplined, stupid team. And here's the thing. I want to sit here and yell at ownership because, well, let's face it. They refuse to spend money, and this is the product that you get what you pay for. You get what you pay for, baby. And thank you, John Henry. Thank you, Fenway Sports Group, for giving me another summer of not caring about baseball. But yet, at the same time, I also have to sit there and put blame on Alex Cora, and just say, how is it? It's either one of two things. It's either one, Alex Cora didn't go over fundamentals over the spring training because these guys are professionals. He thought they knew better. Or two, that they did go over the basics. They went over the fundamentals. They went over, hey, pay attention to how many outs there are. Opening day, you had the pitcher walking off thinking that he got 3 outs, even though it was only 2 outs at the time on opening day. But they went over all the fundamentals, all the little things about the game of baseball in spring training. And yet the players are just too stupid to understand how to play. It went in one ear and out the other. That's how dumb these guys are. Or at least that's what it seems like. And I don't know how they're going to get out of this. They just threw Garrett Whitlock on the IL, DL, whatever you want to call it, this morning. Or actually, not even this morning. Like 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago. So that's another starting pitcher down. Lucas Giolito, Nick Pivetta, Garrett Whitlock. All of which on the ILs. How many arms are going to get blown out? Well, actually, Whitlock's more of an oblique, so it's not his arm at least. But even still. Like, isn't it just crazy to me? And on top of just being stupid, Triston Casas, I mean, my God, this guy friggin' hits a home run on Saturday, 429 feet into right field. Good for you, kid. Great home run. You look like you got every single bit of that ball and then some. It was a sweet swing. That ball sailed and soared right out into right field. It was great. It was a no-doubter for sure. But then after the game, he had the gall to call Ted Williams' chair at 500 feet, or 502 feet. Oh, I'm sorry. By the way, these are the stats I was just talking about earlier. So, just a little FYI. He had the gall to call Triston Casas, had the gall to call Ted Williams' seat, which sits at 502. It's the painted red, the lone red chair all throughout Fenway Park and right, actually not Fenway Park, all throughout right field. He had the gall to call that a myth. And just for fun fact, here's the view from that exact chair. It's pretty far, right? I mean, 502 feet back in the 1940s, it's a heck of a hit. But you also have to remember, Ted Williams is arguably the greatest hitter to ever live. I mean, Tony Gwynn learned everything he could from Ted Williams. And then Barry Bonds, well, Barry Bonds, at least a good portion of it was on steroids. And you know what? When I was younger, I used to hate it, but now I really don't care. And looking back, steroids made the game fun. You know, it was a hell of a lot more fun then than it is now. But to call that a myth, I'm sorry. Who the hell are you? If you were playing good defense, solid defense, didn't have the ball bounce off your foot, you didn't make stupid baseball mistakes, hell, that run that I just described earlier, you learned that in Little League. Once you hit the big field, you don't learn that in high school. Again, who are you, Triston Casas, to call out one of the greatest things about Fenway Park? The mystique that is Fenway Park is what makes it so unique, is so fun, and so enjoyable to be at, which is so shameful that this is the friggin' product that you have to go and watch. But no, you had to be the smart ass saying, no one could hit it further than me. Well, you know what? Actually, 2 days ago, Emmanuel Valdez hit it 449. So tell me, is 429 far enough for you? Can nobody hit it over 430 feet? You arrogant ass. It's the mystique. You know what? Even if that's not true, even if Ted Williams, I don't know, hit it 480 feet and it bounced up there and it stopped there. And so people just was like, there you go. That's where that's the record, 502. Like, you didn't even come close to 480, jackass. Talk about an unlikable team. You know, like, that's the thing that kills me. I love the Red Sox. I want this team to succeed. I want my ownership to invest in them like I would invest in them if I had the money. But I'm telling you, outside of Devers and Cora, maybe it's just because Cora played here in 07 and, you know, that's why I have like an affinity and think that he can't do no wrong, really. Outside of Devers and Cora, this is an unlikable team. You know, and tell me your thoughts. What are your thoughts after everything that I've talked about with this Red Sox organization? You can hit me up on my X below at Boss, B-O-S Sports Summit. You can also go on my Instagram, Boston Sports Summit, as well as my YouTube, Boston Sports Summit, and live every Wednesday on the Grid Network's YouTube channel, GRYD. Next, we got some more Patriots thoughts for you because, well, it is 8 days away from the NFL draft. 8 days away. And the Patriots are still sitting at number 3. And it's interesting because they also are hosting some of the draft, some of the pre-draft visits, And one of them that has kind of surprised me, and I was glad to see this, was they hosted Michael Penix Jr. out of Washington. Now, as you saw last week, and I'll even throw it up again tonight, Michael Penix is my number 2 quarterback in this draft. Now, some of you are probably going to be shocked that I got J.J. McCarthy 3, Daniels from May 4 and 5. But overall, I love Michael Penix. And had he not tore his 2 ACLs, had he not had his shoulder issues, in my opinion, I would have ranked him number 1 over Caleb Williams. But they had him in for dinner on Monday, and they had an official sit-down visit, going over game film, going over what's going through his head, this, that, and the other on Tuesday, so yesterday. And I am kind of excited about that because they allegedly only sent 1 scout to his pro day, and I've heard 1, I've heard 5, from at least the college scouting director, Cam Williams, was there and had 4 other scouts with him at Washington's pro day. So whether they were scouting Michael Penix or Troy Fautanu, also Rome Odunze, the wide receiver, they're going to see Michael Penix. They're going to see him. And I am glad that they brought him in, because if they could find a way to move back. Now, I know you're probably sitting there going, whoa, what do you mean move back? Well, hear me out. I've said it once, I'll say it again. If they could find a way to move back, accumulate more draft capital, especially in the first round, not only this year, but the next couple years, or if they go with Minnesota, get at least 11-23 next year's first out of the deal. If they can do that, I wouldn't mind taking Michael Penix Jr. at 11. And there are talks that he's going to fall to, early second round. And that is debatable. I mean, someone brought up the idea of the Raiders taking Penix at 15. But I love this kid. And I think if you could pair him with a top-tier receiver, really build through this draft, you really have to hit on every single bit of this draft. And I know Brandon Ayuk has requested a trade out of the Niners. And I like Ayuk, I do. But to call him a straight-up number 1, I'm not 100% sure on that. I mean, I think he's got a better chance of being a number 1 than T. Higgins. And I'm not saying T. Higgins sucks. I love T. Higgins. But Higgins has done such a great job as a number 2. I don't know if he has that double coverage ability, to take on the double cover and still win. That is yet to be proven, at least in my opinion. But Michael Penix is the best pure ball. Outside of him being a lefty, outside of his ACLs and his shoulders, if he can stay healthy, I don't see why not. Plus, if you take him later on, then fans might not be, they probably will, but you probably won't be as caring to see him, get in the games right away. So Michael Penix visiting the Patriots, hopefully they're going to learn something and not just going to, and realize that, hey, you know what? We like this kid. Maybe this is the kid that we can see lead our go, in the future. And hopefully that's true, because also Adam Schefter reported on ESPN that the Pats have received calls on the number 3 overall pick. So again, it's not out of the possibility. My question to you is, should the Pats go for the home run shot at number 3? Like I said, you can hit me up on my X or any of these other social medias. Should they go for the home run hit at number 3? Take Drake May at 3. The kid's got a very high ceiling. It's talked about ad nauseum sometimes. But his floor is also pretty significant, because Drake May reminds me of Mitch Trubisky, Zach Wilson, and I don't want to say Sam Darnold, but those types of guys. Josh Rosen. But I don't think Rosen had the arm either. So, at least May's got the upwards in that, right? it's crazy to me. You know, everybody's saying, go home run, hey, go take a guy at 3, take a guy at 3. Where I'm like, I don't know. Because if I can somehow work some magic, pull some magic beans out of a hat and end up with a couple first rounders this year, maybe, a couple more in the future on top of getting the future quarterback, getting, a wide receiver, multiple wide receivers, because this is a great draft class, I've heard for that. And multiple solid offensive tackles and O-linemen in general. I mean, there's very real opportunity for that to happen. So, I don't know. I want to hear what you guys thought. Did the Pats go for the number 3, quarterback, go for the home run shot, or should they try to be smart about it? Because there's a very real possibility. Say the Pats trade back with Minnesota and go 11-23, but say that doesn't happen. It's crazy to me. Excuse me. Say that the Pats trade back with Minnesota for 11-23, and all of a sudden you have not only Minnesota moves up to take Drake May, you have the Giants move up to take J.J. McCarthy, and hell, the Raiders move up before to take Michael Penix. And then you're sitting there at 11 going, well, we didn't get a guy. I don't know. There's a lot of reality that could change. But next week is going to be special because we're going to have draft the day before the show. So what we're going to do on this show next week is we're going to do a live mock draft. That's right. We're going to do a live mock draft for the Patriots. And, if you want, you can help me out. Also, we're going to make some thoughts, make some decisions, and see how it all works out. But next, we got the Boston Bruins. Boston Bruins are in the playoffs. They're the number 2 seed in the Atlantic Division, which means they are going to be facing the Toronto Maple Leafs. And this is the team that I said I am in favor of the Bruins playing. I want them to play this because I think that it's, the Toronto Maple Leafs are softer than the Bruins. And that's where I would be very much okay with, them playing them, right? Because I think the Bruins can take advantage of that and continue on. Whereas I am going to be worried, right? I'm going to be worried about playing this team. So it's one of those situations that if we lose to the Leafs, I'm going to be devastated. I'll probably be not as devastated as last season, like losing to the Panthers, but I'll be devastated if we lose to the friggin' Toronto Maple Leafs. I can tell you that much. They're a much more talented team than the Bruins. No two ways about it. But overall, I am worried that the Bruins are going to lose because I wanted this team. And to some degree, it looks like they wanted that team too. They were hoping the Panthers could do what they did and win out. And that's what they did. So they got the number 1 spot. They're going to play the Lightning. And now the Bruins are here facing off against the Leafs. So it's going to be an interesting series. No two ways about it. And then lastly, the Celtics. The Boston Celtics. Actually, excuse me, before I get onto the Celtics, I do mean to say, we get the Bruins. I do want to say Jack Edwards just announced his retirement after this playoffs, and I loved Jack Edwards. I know he's a very polarizing guy. Some people loved him, some people hated him, but I was a big fan of his, and he had some great lines, man. You know, when the Bruins came back and beat the Leafs in Game 7 down 4-1 in 2013, how he said, Bergeron, the Bruins with the throat at their knives, rip it out of Toronto's hands and stab them in the heart. Great line. Also, a couple of years ago when we beat the Carolina Hurricanes in overtime, when they wore their Hartford Whaler jerseys, and he talked about ripping the blubber out of them. It was absolutely hilarious. Like, just the great lines, the great enthusiasm, charisma that Jack Edwards brought to the Bruins, and what a great ambassador to the game of hockey, as well as the Boston Bruins. You can tell he really cared about that team and really loved the Bruins, and that's something that I love to see. If you're gonna at least be a little non-biased, but at the same time, you have every right to be biased, man. It is absolutely fun to watch. Somebody like Jack makes it fun, makes it entertaining. So he's going to be missed. While also Mike Gorman is going to be stepping away from the Celtics. This is his final season. They had a big party for him, before, during, and after the game, their final game of the season on Sunday. So, again, just another guy who, everybody loved him. He was a man of class. And for 43 years, calling the Celtics games, him, and you got Tommy Heinsohn with him. Now you got Scalabrine. I mean, Mike and Tommy was my childhood, basically. And it's going to be tough to see Mike not call any more games and have to hear a new voice. But you know what? Congrats on your retirement, Mike, and Jack. I hope, you guys both enjoy, because you were just such mainstays and staples of the Bruins and the Celtics. And, at least from my perspective, loved both of them. They were great. So also the Celtics getting on, they're going to be playing the loser of this game that's going on, which is the Sixers and the Heat. The loser of that's going to play the winner of the Hawks and the what are the Hawks playing? Nobody really, but whoever. The Bulls. Excuse me, the Bulls. The Hawks and the Bulls. So the winner of that game is going to play the loser of the game that's currently going on right now. And the Celtics aren't going to find out who they face until Friday. So if they play the Heat or the Sixers, is that going to be the toughest round of the playoffs outside of the finals, outside of the NBA finals? Will the first round be the toughest round? I think it will be. I think it 100% will be. And it's crazy to me that, again, the Bruins could have gotten the Lightning for winning the Atlantic Division, which is probably one of the tougher first-round matchups you can get, which is why everyone in the NHL is complaining. And now to have this, where you're playing the Heat, who beat you in the Eastern Conference Finals, again, even though you're not as talented, you should still beat them. But they hold a number against you because they're tougher than you. The Sixers, on the other hand, Joel Embiid is a force. He is a force. And That's what scares me. Can Porzingis hold off Embiid? He hasn't before, so hopefully they can. But at the end of the day, I'm hoping for the Bulls, to be honest with you. I would love to have the Bulls because then the matchup would be easier. I don't want the Hawks because of what they did to us. Being up 30 and then beating us fair game the next game after. So I'm looking at this first round for the Celtics. Now, don't get me wrong. They should beat everybody at least in a gentleman's sweep. The Celtics should win, each series by game 5, seeing how they played all season long. Like that's what should happen. Maybe the semifinals, maybe the Eastern Conference Finals. All right, I'll give you 6 games. Or if you play the Sixers, I'll give you beating the Sixers in 6. But if you don't make it to the finals, that's what's going to be the biggest upset of them all. This is the most dominant team in basketball right now. And that's why if they won, they have to make it to the finals. And they have to do it with some ease to it because of how they played and how they just annihilated the entire Eastern Conference, winning by double digits, winning the East by double digits. But making it to the finals, then they have to win it. I'm sorry. I am on the wagon that they have to win the finals or else the season is a failure. There is nothing. I don't even care if they play the Nuggets and Nikola Jokic, who is probably the reigning or the MVP this season, who should be at least. The dude is just absolutely unbelievable. Probably one of the best passing big men since Larry Bird and Kevin McHale in the 80s. This is such a good team. The Nuggets are a good team. They're a well-coached team. And if they lose to the Nuggets in 7 in the finals, then I can sit there and be like, okay, as much as it sucks, I don't think that then I reserve the right to at least backtrack a little bit, saying it's not a total failure because they're still a little too young, a little too, whatever you want to call it, but pressure-ridden. But yeah, at least make it to the finals first, and then we can discuss, who they're playing and what should happen. At the end of the day, the Celtics should win the NBA championship this year. There's no two ways about it. But hey, time will tell. The way this team has come and gone over the last 4 years, 5 years. That's a big ask, man. That is a big ask. So I want to thank you guys for listening. I appreciate you sticking through the minor technical difficulties. But for the Boston Sports Summit, I am your host, Tim Barnett, as we are presented by the Grid Network live every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much for tuning in. And like I said, if you have any thoughts on the Red Sox and how much they suck, the Patriots and the Kraft versus Belichick, part 50, that's probably about to come up within the next couple of weeks. The Bruins playing the Leafs, is that the better matchup for them? Or did I talk myself so much into the Bruins playing the Lightning is better for them that, this is actually the scarier matchup. And then finally with the Celtics, they're playing the playoffs. They won't find out who they're going to play until Friday. And should the Celtics go all the way? Should the Celtics win the NBA championship? You can hit me up on my social medias at Boston Sports Summit on Instagram and YouTube, at BOS Sports Summit on X. And then obviously every Wednesday, 7 p.m., the Grid Network presents the Boston Sports Summit. So thank you guys for tuning in and sticking around with me, your host, Tim Barnett, where I'll be back next Wednesday to talk more Boston sports. I'll see you guys then. Have a great night. Have a great weekend. And God bless. Thank you.